Good evening and welcome to Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Cindy Mabi and this is ANN7 Prime. Our top story this half hour, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa came out strongly in favor of radical economic transformation. This is Ramaphosa's first unequivocal speech on government's economic policy. Ramaphosa told the Black Business Council that radical economic transformation would happen despite opposition to the move, and the Deputy President took the bold stance amid criticism that he wasn't taking a clear position on the contentious issue. It now remains to be seen if Ramaphosa's statement is a sign of the ANC top brass uniting behind the proposed economic policy or mere sloganeering ahead of the December elective conference. The Deputy President made statements that suggest he's on the campaign trail. Ramaphosa told the audience that radical economic transformation is non-negotiable. He says radical economic transformation is about building an inclusive collective economy. Ramaphosa says radical transformation is about building a more equal society and drawing the majority into the mainstream. A radical economic transformation is often been seen as President Jacob Zuma's legacy project. Ramaphosa's latest statement is interpreted in some quarters as the beginning of the ANC presidential race.
The country needs to undergo radical socio-economic transformation. One of the key aspects is to ensure the participation of Black people in the economy as owners and top managers, and not only as workers.
The government's program of radical economic transformation is about placing the economy on a quantitatively different path that ensures more rapid, sustainable growth, higher investment, increased employment, reduced inequality, and the deracialization of our economy. That's when the term started seeing the light of day. And of course, we've packed it with a whole number of things, and that term still needs further definition. And I would say those who are dismissing this term, they should sit down, listen, smell the coffee.
Meanwhile, Cyril Ramaphosa's endorsement of economic transformation is seen as an attempt to appeal to workers.
Rally behind Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. Because Cosatu, we are not voting in the conference. And they forget, comrades, that there is no branch of the ANC that we are going to find without the workers and the working class in that particular branch. We are saying, comrades, Cyril Ramaphosa for president.
Joining us live in studios, Fiso Mahlangu, resident political analyst. Sizwe Pamla is Cosatu spokesperson. He'll join us in a bit. Good evening again to you. Fiso, would you say that President or Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa was essentially speaking to the converted? Or is this an indication that the top brass are now uniting against the ANC policy on radical economic transformation?
Well, it's a very tactical and innovative move from the Deputy President, also known as CR17, to associate himself with radical economic transformation, because it is not only the buzzword in this country, it is also the ideal political agenda. It has been made the frontier and the legacy project of President Jacob Zuma. But what it also is, it is the hope for Black people during the second transition of freedom. Radical economic transformation is not a new thing. Some people in this country pretend like they've never heard of it before. Maybe because the ANC has coined or recoined the term radical economic or radical socio-economic transformation. The second phase of freedom means now this country can return to Black people economically, whilst in the first phase of freedom, it had returned to Black people politically. And so this will assist in the fight against white monopoly capital, and it will be an investment on Black lives throughout the board. So the ANC released its policy documents. These policy documents are not cast in stone. They are attempts or proposals that the ANC will adopt during its policy conference in June this year. So the Deputy President siding with radical economic transformation because we've never heard him speak like this before. And you know his exact words were, for those of you who don't believe in radical economic transformation, you better wake up and smell the coffee because this is the direction that this country is going. So I think also to garner himself some support, he's got to go with radical economic transformation. But I think the question is, Cindy, if Mr. Ramaphosa is the Deputy President of the ANC, which he is, and he's a presidential aspirant, which he is, why wouldn't he want radical economic transformation? I would be afraid to vote for a leader who did not talk about transforming Black lives because we are 23 years late. However, it will not be an easy process. I realize that even Mr. Ramaphosa has acknowledged that. But even as a business leader himself, he's got to appeal to entrepreneurs. He's got to appeal to big business. He's got to appeal to investors who he is trusted by, that radical economic transformation is not a direct policy shift of the ANC. It's not reverse apartheid, and it is not, freedom in disguise of sending white people back to the sea, as many term it. But it is allowing black people for the first time in this country to participate in the economy, that which they build. So it's not segregation, but it's allowing the Freedom Charter to be realized and to allow the economy to be part of the freedom that South Africa claims it has.
All right, let's join, or rather invite Pamela, Cosatu spokesperson. Mr. Pamela, thanks so much for your time and good evening. What do you make of those trivializing the statement by CR17, as it were, that radical economic transformation is a reality? They must wake up and smell the coffee.
Well, for us as Cosatu, we really have got no time for critics. We are happy to hear that the majority of ANC leaders, at long last, they've decided to join us. When we went to the 11th National Congress of Cosatu, we were talking about radical economic transformation. At the time, we actually were saying, looking at the Brazilian model, we were encouraged by the fact that the second term of President Lula da Silva had actually delivered for the Brazilian people. And at the time we said we were going to fully support President Jacob Zuma because we were hoping that in his second term he was also going to deliver our own Lula moment in South Africa. People were sneering at the time. They didn't really pay attention. We are happy now that everyone has decided to really wake up to that reality, that the status quo is unsustainable. Of course, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be dead even. When you have got people who are defending their inherited privileges and ill-gotten gains that they have enjoyed for over centuries, you don't expect them to hand over everything without putting a fight. We actually used to remind the ANC that what we will need to actually achieve radical economic transformation is political will. We are starting to get a sense that this is starting to sink, especially at an alliance level, when you look at the fact that there is not one single alliance entity that is against economic transformation. But having said that, we have been here before. If you look at something as easy as e-tolls, not one single alliance partner is prepared to defend e-tolls, and yet the countries are still standing. So even with this positive message coming out from the ANC, as Cosatu, we still want to hear more in terms of the detail. For an example, we were watching the reaction or the lack of reaction from people within the alliance and the ANC when Comrade Chris Malikane was outlining his own views and vision of what radical economic transformation should look like. For us, if you look at the Cosatu document, the growth path towards full employment, just about everything articulated by Comrade Chris is actually contained in our own literature. So when we were listening to people, some of them starting to distance themselves or not necessarily coming out openly to engage, we felt that we need to be cautious because we have seen all of the sloganeering before without people boldly coming out to say they actually support this or that proposal. So of course, we are going to be patient. We hope that at some point we will convene an alliance meeting where we will thresh out the details, and also that the policy conference of the ANC will not focus on factional fights, but will also spend a lot of time really outlining the detail and giving the content to this term, radical economic transformation.
Mr. Pamela, please stay on the line. We have Botsang Moyelo, political analyst, joining us. Good evening to you, Botsang. As Mr. Pamela was saying, that this needs to go beyond the rhetoric, and we know that it's going to be difficult. But with CR17 now also getting onto the presidential campaign trail, the delivery or the implementation thereof is going to be the litmus test for the party. Do you see this as a retrospective redress or dealing with the issues within the tripartite alliance, the stance that the president made, or deputy?
Good evening, Cindy, and to your viewers. I don't think it is a mere, out-of-hand cold statement. I've always maintained that when people look at ANC leaders talking and they think it's individuals talking, then they're making a big mistake. Because the ANC has this ability of raising from ashes and putting up things together, especially towards elections and so forth. And I think the movement or the political party itself, time has come for the ANC to deliver on what they have promised the people. It is a positive thing for the movement or the organization and the country that even the deputy president, who has been seen as a capitalist, who have been seen as a business person who's not adding any value towards the poor black majority, is talking along the same lines. Therefore, I cannot sit here and say two presidents who are president of the ruling party in the country and leaders of the country itself, they are talking the same language, and we call it just sloganeering, and there won't be anything coming out of that. I think the organization is under pressure. It's been 23 years that they are in the helm of the country, and they must start delivering towards the poor black majority. However, Cindy, there's a challenge in the country, and the ANC should not make a mistake of thinking their policies as an organization will transmit into the national policies easily. They are going to be faced with restraint from the oppositions like the DA. They are going to be faced with restraints from the business sector and the so-called international investors that are trying to lay into the country, because we should not lie or be shy from saying this thing is actually racially based. The economic sector in South Africa is racially based. Black people are poor, white people are rich, and it's like that. They've been having an advantageous position, not because they did better from 1994 to today, because the apartheid historical system had put them in a position that they could survive for the next 100 years without being affected by poverty in this country. Now, what the ANC is trying to do at the moment, is talking about, is to say, in order to reverse the past and to bring a balance and equity within the nation, we cannot go on as what we have been doing for the last 20 to 23 years. It cannot be business as usual. And I've said on this platform before, the word radical, it means the business is not going to be status quo as it has been happening. And when we call for radical economic transformation, we are actually simply and clearly saying, let black people have equitable share. But the problem is government policies, the constitution of the country, which is protecting business and minority rights to date. That's why I'm saying ANC is not going to just come and implement their policies of the organization when the constitution of the country is restraining them. They have to also focus on changing the laws of this country.
And that brings me to the question, Siso, that for those that have not clearly or in clandestine ways sort of adopted the policy of radical economic transformation, and on the other side, the run-of-the-mill policies that we've always had in the country, that even for Cyril Ramaphosa, this is a message that you'd have to sell to the business sector, the investors, etc. At the moment, he was speaking to the Black Business Council, which I essentially converted. So do you think this is a message that would be easily embraced, if you will, by those sectors?
I think it's a message that will be embraced, but it is not his message. I think we must always be mindful of that. it is the message of the top six or the message of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Mr. Gigaba, who just came in as Minister of Finance, has not come in with a clean broom, as we think the clean broom sweeps cleaner. He'd have to still implement the policies that were decided on their last elective conference, or rather the last policy conference. In the same way that Mr. Ramaphosa, if he were to become the president, would not simply create his own policies that were outside of the NEC policies. During the tenure of President Mandela, or even before, during the apartheid regime, the same people who now call former President Mandela the world icon and the glorious father of the nation called him a terrorist before. And so it always happens that a sitting president will be insulted or assaulted, and South Africans seem to have this conception that the best president is the one that just left or the one that is to come. So every 5 years there is a break-in party. Cosatu, decides for itself if it wants to join or break away. The SACP always threatens the ruling party with a breakaway in ascension of the coming elections. And just before the elections, everybody unites again, moves up to policy, and people hope to be appointed as ministers in the next cabinet. So the hustle that we're seeing at this point is not unusual.
I hate to interrupt. I believe Mr. Pamela's time is quite constrained. Just in your reaction and how the tripartite alliance will keep it together to realize the socio-economic, radical economic transformation, particularly where there are certain quarters within Cosatu calling for what many have called the pioneer or the champion of radical economic transformation for his ouster. And then in the same breath, there's also issues around who Cosatu is backing to be the next president of the ANC. Will you bury the hatchet to realize the radical economic transformation?
Firstly, it's not true that President Jacob Zuma is the pioneer of radical economic transformation. Let's correct that. It's not true. The issue of radical economic transformation, when we went to Polokwane 10 years ago, was on the table. President Jacob Zuma has been part of the presidency since 1999. So the whole thing that now we have to start judging President Jacob Zuma as a champion of radical economic transformation is a myth that as Cosatu we are not going to allow people to perpetuate. It's not true. That thing of radical economic transformation actually came out of the discussions at an alliance level. President Jacob Zuma adopted the NDP in Mangaung. The same NDP that we said at an alliance level, the labor and economic chapters needed to be reviewed. They are yet to be reviewed even today. So for us, we like the fact that people all of a sudden are excited about radical economic transformation. But what we are not going to allow ourselves is to be told that all of a sudden, because people are dealing with a fluid political situation, with difficulties, then all of us have to toe the line. No, we have been here since 10 years ago when we supported him. We supported him with the understanding that he was going to lead this process. He disappointed us in his first term. And then now we are already doing a countdown to 2019. We like the fact that at long last, which is why we have not dismissed it. What we have said is that we are going to wait up until people start to implement. We have been here before. The NDP that was adopted, at an alliance level, we agreed that the labor and economic chapters needed to be revisited. The ANC went to its NGC in 2015 and pretended as if we don't have such a decision. So we have dealt with the ANC. We have had this kind of rhetoric. We have drafted manifestos with the ANC. We have campaigned with the ANC. We have set an alliance level to discuss policy.
Mr. Pamela, yes. I know we don't have a lot of time, but just very quickly for clarity's sake, Botsang Mwilwa and many of our analysts had said that the policies and the implementation thereof are extremely rigid because they still favor those that have, or the minority white that have the wealth, in that even if Jacob Zuma, all the previous presidents, wanted to implement radical economic transformation, the Constitution is a stumbling block, and many other reforms as well. What is your view?
when we adopted the policies, some of the policies like the National Health Insurance, for example, there are no constitutional restraints when it comes to implementing the NHI. It's the ANC itself that actually wanted to water down the NHI. They refused to release the white paper, and up until we threatened and campaigned for them to push them to release the NHI. The issue of a state pharmaceutical company, there is no law that stops government to actually come out with a state pharmaceutical company. When we were fighting for the minimum wage at Netlec, there were no laws that were stopping government from introducing a national minimum wage. So this whole thing that we have to put excuses as to why the ANC has failed. The ANC has failed us. But the point we're making as Cosatu, as an alliance partner, we have been patient and we continue to be patient. But what we are not going to allow is a situation where all the talk is regarded as action. All of them are saying the right things. We are waiting for them to act because
right,
we have to drag the ANC to implement the national minimum wage, despite the fact that it is their policy.
Political analyst Samuel would like to respond because I think we've just ticked all the boxes that he mentioned.
Cindy, I'm having a problem with the Cosatu leader. When he's green, he claims that an alliance came with these policies. Well, actually, I'll be embarrassed to say in 2007 in Polokwane. And then when things did not happen, he points a hand at the ANC to say the ANC has failed us. Now he is distancing Cosatu from the ANC. Yes, the ANC is the ruling party. Yes, the ANC is the leader of the alliance. But actually, if they failed, then they must have failed collectively as an alliance. Now, also to sit here and start saying this is not a Zuma thing and all that, I don't think the country needs that at the moment. A topic has been introduced to the nation being called radical economic, transformation. The nation is excited about it. It does not matter, or it shouldn't matter who introduced it. None of us, I've never said it's a Zuma policy. I've said ANC has worked collectively. This has been ANC policies for all along. But we should not take away the fact that none of the ANC leaders prior to Zuma, even himself, as the Cosatu is saying, from 2007 until 2 months back, then President Zuma brought this topic onto the table. We should not put a blind eye on that. He was brave to do that. He is doing it. I agree with him when he says the nation and the people now, they want to see implementation of that. But also, don't put a blind eye on saying there were no laws that were restricting people. There are so many laws, including the constitution of this country. You cannot transform any nation, Cindy. I'm the one who sat on this platform and said to the nation, you cannot build an equal society with a constitution that still guarantees minority rights and protect rights that were acquired under the apartheid system. You cannot. So there's a law, it's existing, that protects what people inherited and benefited during apartheid. Now, what we should be doing as a nation is to look at hindrances, to look at systems. Why is government still doing business with multinational and white companies when there are black people they want to promote? Those are hindrances. Those are
just
some
very
of the
briefly,
things
we're out of
look
time,
at.
but I beg your pardon.
Yeah, well, I think the spokesperson of Cosatu can raise that it is not President Jacob Zuma or the current ANC leadership that has raised the bar for radical economic transformation. And indeed, it cannot be a one-man job. There have been other attempts to empower this economy and allow black people to participate in this economy, and many of them have failed. There was the Associated Shared Growth Initiative of South Africa, also called ASGISA. That didn't work very much. It also went to GIPSA. That didn't work very much. It went to GEAR. That did not work very much. But I think as a collective decision, radical economic transformation had to be coined. So it's not, I think, an issue of terminology, and I don't think we must attempt to apply standard one semantics and deal with is it a matter of who termed the process or who termed the phrase. We don't want to deal with phrases. We want to deal with the implementation and the process of allowing black people to participate in this economy. But I want to close with this. Cosatu should not be an alliance when it's convenient. When things don't work, they say, well, it is the ANC. Just a few weeks ago, they were saying that they are the ANC and the ANC wins because of them. I think if they want to be an alliance and a credible alliance, they must take the fights and also take the victories with
Okay,
ANC.
the bitter and the sweet. I'm sorry, Botsang, we're really out of time, but we appreciate your time. We will continue this offline, of course. That's Botsang Moelo, political analyst, Fiso Mahlangu, residential political analyst, and Sizwe Pamla, Cosatu spokesperson. Thanks indeed for watching. Clive Ramatibela Smith is up next with Biz Pulse. Do stay with us.